Hi everyone. The Shiur tonight will be for the protection of all the soldiers and the memory of all those we've lost, and the merit of the return of the hostages, and for the immediate revelation of Mashiach. I want to ask you in the audience who are listening now to please introduce yourselves. What's the first thing you're going to say? That's right. It'd probably be your name. What does that tell me? That this is primary to your identity. I need to know your name before I know anything else. And that's what this week's Torah portion is about. Shemot means names. Our soul and our neshama, our soul and our names are inherently tied together. How do I know this? Because Shem, the word for name, Shem, is the root of neshama, of the word for soul. That tells me that there's a link between them. I also know that you can access your soul through neshima, breath. Again, because there's a root between them, because the words are connected. Another Judaic principle that is intricately connected to our names is gematria. A gematria is basically a numerical value that is attributed to each letter that composes the names of everything that we have. It's a mathematical formula that underlies the Torah. It's underneath the Torah. I can tell you that gravity exists, or I can give you the mathematical formula for gravity, and you'll be able to derive it yourself and understand really what gravity is. It's translating that concept into numbers. The numerical value is a name that is directly connected to its reality. For a quick example, you can take water. Water in science is called H2O. Why? Because there are 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom. Now, the word in Hebrew is mayim, which is, interestingly enough, composed of 2 mems and 1 yud. And so we see that there's a deep connection between the atomic nature of water and the name of the word itself. From this, we can see that the names, or the Shemot, are never by chance. They are deep codes that give us insight into each person or object from which or to which we are addressing. The Shemot, the parsha of Shemot, opens up with Hashem making an accounting of the Jews. And Rashi tells us that they are like the celestial bodies, which it says in Tehillim that Hashem brings them out by number, He counts them each by number and calls each of them by name. And Rashi brings this here in this moment to tell us that the Jews are similar to the celestial bodies. That just as Hashem brings out each of the stars and counts them all and knows them by name, so too each of the Jews, He counts them all and He knows each Jew by name. So I ask, how come we don't know His names? This accounting leads us into Moshe's birth, into Pharaoh's evil decree to kill all the firstborn children, as well as Moshe meeting Tzipporah, his wife, and his father-in-law Yisro, and to ultimately Moshe's return to Egypt to redeem all the Jews. When he returns to Egypt to redeem the Jews, Moshe says, God has ordained that the Jews leave Egypt. To which Pharaoh replies in chapter 5, verse 2, Who is Havaya? Who is Hashem that I should heed His voice? I don't know Him. I don't know Havaya. And so we have to ask, who is Havaya? And it says in the Gemara in Braude, in page 28b, it says, Know before whom you stand. Dao lifnei mi atem omdim. And so I found it appropriate to chart a journey with you where we explore HaShem's names and their different meanings, their different energies. At this point, I want to say that the hippies got it right. Hashem is one. He manifests as everything around us and connects all of us together. We see this through His different names or expressions of self. But He also has other things that He needs from us, and is the most intellectual being that has ever existed, will exist, or does currently exist. The names themselves tell us whether we are talking to our Father or to a king, whether to speak with affection or seriousness, whether with love or fear. From here, I'm going to move to speaking about each different name of Hashem that we have to say during our davening, and their individual meaning. But let's keep our goal in mind. Rav Shimshon Pincus says that the purpose is for man in his lowly state to perceive divinity with his own human senses and faculties. I can do this because I am a father. Just like Hashem is a father, I am a father. Just like Hashem is a master of the world, so too am I a master of my house. And etc., etc., that all these different ideas, all these different things that I have in common with Hashem. In the same way, Hashem's names function to awaken him in different ways. When I say Elokim, it's like saying your child's full name after they've done something bad. They know that Judgment Day is coming. When I say Adni, it's like I'm talking to a king or to my boss or to a judge. I use it with reverence, with honor, with respect. This is the idea behind the names. The first few names that we will discuss are connected to Hanukkah. They are Ekyeh, Adni, and Elokim. We'll start at the top and we'll work our way down. Most of these can be found in our Shemona Esrei prayer, and I'll purposefully be mispronouncing them because these are names that we're forbidden from saying. We can't say them in vain. So the first one is Ekyeh. The name Ekyeh is Hashem's divine name, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey, but it's from his perspective. And so it starts with an Aleph. The same way that any word you say in Hebrew, for example, I will go, is Elech. You start with an Aleph when it's from your perspective. The gematria of the name Ekyeh is 21, which if you simply add up the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you'll get the sum of 21. And I believe it's because 1 through 6 represents the 6 work days in a week. And it's only through our work can we really reach Hashem. It's also connected to the unity of the seventh, which Rabbi Akiva Tatz speaks about this in a beautiful analogy. We've all seen these little cutouts, cardboard cutouts, where you have 4 squares going up, and 1 on this side and 1 on this side. 6 squares in total. And when you fold it up together, you get a cube. And the way he explained it is these 6 squares are like the 6 days of the week. We could see they're each distinct. But when I fold them together, I get something completely new. This is the unity of the seventh. This is when you put everything together, you get something brand new. And this is the name Ekyeh. When you add those 6, you get something completely different. The unity of them all. This also connects to Pirkei Avot. There's a famous one that says that it's good to combine your Torah study with an occupation, because both of these things keep sin out of mind. By working, we reach the culmination, which is to reach Hashem. Interestingly enough, about the number 21, it's the 8th number in the Fibonacci sequence. 8, as we know, is this number in Judaism of being above nature. The world was created in 7 days. There are 7 colors in a rainbow. Many other 7s all associated with nature, but 8 is above nature. The significance, specifically in regards to the Fibonacci sequence, is that, like I said, 21 is the 8th number in the Fibonacci sequence, and it represents nature, but the sequence is found within nature, and that's what's so interesting about it. If you look at Apple's design, for example, they use the Fibonacci sequence to make their logo. We also see it as the ideal proportions for beauty. It's actually called a mathematical formula for beauty. It's also used in finance, in coding, physics. It's called the golden ratio, phi, if you know physics. The Fibonacci sequence is an irrational number that goes on forever. And what's interesting about this 8th number, about 21, is that it's entirely subsumed in the Fibonacci sequence. Meaning, if I take the 2 and separate it out, and the 1 and separate that out, both those numbers are in the Fibonacci sequence. If I add them together, you get 3. That's also in the sequence. It's the only number that does that. What's so unique about this name is that it's a name of essence, Hashem's highest name, but it manifests in a way of nature. It's him concealing himself, hiding himself in nature. The next name that we're going to talk about is Adni, Aleph, Dalet, Nun, and Yud. This is a name of transmission, of bringing down something. It's the idea of bringing down this name of essence into the world. You can think of it kind of like the king's decree. When a king issues a decree, he needs people to send it out, messengers to transmit this decree into the whole kingdom. This is this name, Adni. We can relate to this as a connector, because we must say this name and think of Havaya. This is something that Rabbi Kivitat speaks about a few times. He says we must articulate with the mouth what the mouth can articulate, and think what the mind can think. So when we say Baruch Atah Hashem, I say Aleph Daled Nun Yud Ani, but I think in my head Yud Kei Vav Kei, because that's the only thing. My mouth can't articulate that name, but it can think about it. We'll get into that later. The last name we'll talk about is Elokim. Elokim means master of all powers. It's really a manifestation of power behind all the phenomena in the world. This is why in many Eastern religions, they have many different gods attributed to different natural forces. The god of the sea, the god of the sun, the mountains, whatever it is. Because they see this multiplicity in nature, but they all have a power. In Yiddishkeit, this is one name. It's the name Elokim, which is a plural name, to express this idea that he manifests in all these different powers. It's one God, one name, but it manifests in all these different ways. It's also a name of din, of judgment, because he limits himself to just providing power to the sea, to just providing power to the mountains, the sun, the wind, etc. When you take each of these three names, Aleph, Ekia, Adni, and Elokim, and to each name you add Hashem's name Havaya, Yud Kei Vav Kei, you get the number 250, which is also the same gematria as Ner, candle. And we know in Tehillim, it says Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam, that the soul, the candle of Hashem, is the soul of man. The Vilna Gaon actually says something quite incredible about this as well. He says Nefesh, which is a word for soul, also is an acronym for Ner, Ptil, Shemen. Ner being the candle, Ptil is the wick, and Shemen is the oil. So he's saying the soul of man is the candle to Hashem. And these three names are associated with the candle through this gematria. But it goes even deeper. And so to break it down quickly, we have Ekia, which is the name of essence. This is that candle, the fire that we see on top. Then you have, it's also the soul that's within man. Then you have Adni. This is the form that brings that essence into the world. This is the idea of man. Man's body, this physical body, is what brings Hashem's essence into the world. It takes my soul and it portrays it out into the world. And then you have Elokim, and this is physical manifestation. As many people know, Elokim is the same gematria of Hateva, of nature. And this is the candle burning. This is the candle burning. So what we have is we have the name of essence. This, I misspoke, is actually the oil. Because you don't see this. You don't see the soul, and you don't see the oil, which sits below. You have the wick, which is man. This is the name Adni. And this is what you can see. This is the name of transmission. And then you have Elokim, which is a physical manifestation. This is the light you see at the end, the fire. So that's how those three names connect to Chanukah. Now I want to go into depth with a different set of names. Three names. The first is Shakai, Shin, Daled, Yud. Then there's Hamakom. And then there's a different name that I discovered recently, which is Pei, Aleph, and Yud. And so we'll start with Shakai. In Tractate Chagiga, on page 12a, it says that he said to the world, enough. And this is the verse that's associated with this name. She'amar le'olamo dai. That he said to the world, enough. And this name is very, very interesting because it says in now the next week's Torah portion after Shemot that Hashem revealed only this name to the forefathers. He didn't reveal his name of essence, of Yud Kei Vav Kei. Why is that? Because the forefathers were able to experience Hashem within nature. They saw the miracles that were clothed within nature. A nice proof for this is pi. Pi, as we know, is another irrational number, and it never repeats. It goes on forever and ever and ever, but it never repeats. And so, as scientists, people round it off to 3.14, even though it goes on forever. Could anyone guess what is the gematria of the name Shin Daled Yud? Exactly, it's 314, 3.14. Why is this? Because Hashem uses his different names to create and structure the fabric of our creation. This name represents the infinite within the finite. It's associated with concealed miracles, and hence we have the connection to pi, which is an infinite number, an infinite string of finite numbers. This is the idea. Hashem brings His infinite, being into this world in a finite way. Excuse me. The next name is Hamakom. If anyone's ever been to a funeral, or a shiva, they would know that this is part of a pasuk that we say to the mourners. Hamakom Yerachem, that Hashem, literally Hamakom, that's how they translate it, but Hashem should provide you with consolation. The gematria of Havaya squared, meaning if you take the Yud and square it, the Hey and square it, the Vav square it, and the Hey and you square it, you'll get the gematria of 186, which is Makom. And so we could see that there's an inherent relationship between Hashem's divine name of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei and Hamakom. And I think that this is why we call it space-time. Because the name Havaya is associated with He is, was, and always will be, time, and Makom is space. And there's really one thing that dawned on me when I was thinking about this. And that is that whenever you go to buy a house, you ask how many square meters is a house. Because I don't live in the space up here. I live on the area that I could traverse, the space that I could walk around. So to open up this subject a bit more, there's something I learned about that's called neuroarchitecture. And it basically describes, it's a study these days, of how your emotions and your behaviors and your well-being are affected by the architecture around you. So if you walk into a room that's got very big ceilings, you feel a different way than if you walk into a place that's quite cramped or with smaller corridors. Depending on the colors of the walls or the fabrics of the material, of the couch, of the different materials they're using, will make people feel differently. And they found this connected to different architectural sites in Greek and Rome, that they tried to stimulate alpha waves or stimulate creative patterns in their thought in order to, innovate. And so I found that very interesting how Hamakom, this idea of place and location, is so connected to the divine when we really delve into the study of it. That's Hamakom. You can go into that yourself. The last one that I really, really liked, you'll see it if you walk into a Sephardi shul. They usually have this picture of a menorah with all these different divine names on it. And one of them is Pei Aleph Yud. And when I looked into it, I think I got this from Rav Ginsburg, who lives in Kfar Chabad. The idea of Pei Aleph Yud is Potech et Yadecha, which we say 3 times a day. It's again, whenever we're praying, it's in Ashrei. We say, Potech es Yadecha, open up your hands. And the way I understand this is that when you open up your hands, Hashem will give to you. He is sending down the brachas. All you have to do is open up your hands, open up your 10 midos, and just receive what He has to give you, and He'll give it to you. And so you'll see many Sephardim, when they're doing Ashrei, they open up their hands literally, as so to receive these blessings. What I found was very interesting about Pei Aleph Yud is that it's the gematria 91, which is the same gematria as Amen, which you say all the time, and it's the same as Yud-Kei Vav-Kei mixed with Adni. Havaya and Adni, when you put them together, you also get 91. And this is something also that you'll see on these pictures of the menorah. Why is that? Because when you take Yud-Kei Vav-Kei and Adni, you're bringing down a full connection. You're connecting the two opposites together. And it's the same with Amen. When I make a bracha and someone else says Amen, they've stamped it. I wrote the letter, they put the stamp, it's now gone off to heaven. That's the idea. It's a stamp, a stamp that it should be sealed and sent off to heaven. And so this idea that Pei Aleph Yud is also like the completing of that union. Hashem sending down the bracha and you receiving it. So another beautiful idea, beautiful connection. Then I have 2 honorable mentions. The one is Agla, which is Aleph Gimel Lamed Aleph, which we say in the second bracha of the Amidah, which is Atah Gibor Le'olam Hashem. That this bracha, there's not much written about it, but I know that it's associated with reviving the dead. There's a few, I've read 1 or 2 stories of the Baal Shem Tov, where it says that during this bracha is focused on these kinds of names. I don't know much about it so far, but the research is still underway. And the other name is Om, which again I heard from Rav Ginsburg. He described this in the Torah portion of Avram, when he was giving gifts to his children and sending them to the east. It says that this was one of the names that he gave them. And if you've ever been to a yoga class, then you've most likely heard them sitting there going Om, Om. And you'll even see it in our Monday, Thursday prayers when we're doing Tachnun, the long Tachnun, that you'll see it's written there, Aleph, Vav, Mem. There's 3 psukim in the Torah that detail Hashem's 72-letter name. And the way they take these 3 psukim is they divide them into 3, I think it's called quartets. Not quartets, whatever. They divide them into names of 3 letters. And so you end up getting 72 names that each have 3 letters. And this is one of those names, Aleph, Vav, Mem. Rav Ginsburg describes this name as being associated with Tuma. Not that it's a Tuma name, God forbid, it's Hashem's name, but it's a name that's open to all those people, everyone in the world. So you could have people in the East who are sitting there saying Hashem's name over and over, but they're not necessarily pure. Yet they're allowed to say this name. And it allows them to connect to Hashem's divine essence in their own way. Rav Ginsburg says that this is a name of bittul, of nullification, which is very much what we see in yoga, that they try to levatel themselves. They try to become nothing. That's very much Eastern philosophy. The final name I want to speak about, I have to speak about, is the name Havaya, Yud Kei Vav Kei. This name Rav Akiva Tatz adequately describes that not only are we halakhically not allowed to say the name, but Rav Akiva Tatz says that we actually can't say the name. We're unable to articulate the name even, which I found very profound. I've never heard that before. It's the name that was used to create the whole world. It's the name of essence, Hashem's name. It's not associated with finiteness of anything physical. And so it's impossible for my physical lips to pronounce that name. That brings light to the miracle that it happened on Yom Kippur when the Kohen Gadol would come out and say Hashem's name, Hashem HaMafarash. He would say this name. It was such a miracle because no one's ever heard it before. We didn't think it was possible to hear it. And now we're hearing it. This name, as I said earlier, represents that he was, is, and always will be. It's for this reason that it's the source of existence. That's what the Zohar says. We, as many know, operate in space and time. And so if you go back to the earliest time you can think of, or if you think about the edges of space, which is one of my favorite things to think about when I'm meditating on these things, he's outside of those things, outside of those bounds. So the edge of space, he's beyond it. Earliest thing you can think about in time, he preceded that. It's an incredible way to open up your mind to what Hashem really is. The Rambam says something incredible, that Hashem is even anything false that we've ever heard. So if someone comes and tells you something false, Hashem even created that. That's from this name. It is also in the name, in our DNA. If anyone knows that our DNA is a double helix with all these little connections in between, and there's a sequence of every number of these connections, there's a unique bridge that's formed out of a certain chemical. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, but I'll write it down later. And it happens at a sequence of every few numbers. And the scientists found that the sequence was every 10, every 5, every 6, and every 5. And then it repeated, every 10, every 5, every 6, every 5. Every time they counted those numbers, they saw this unique bridge. As we know in Yiddishkeit, this is Hashem's divine name. Yud is 10, Hey is 5, Vav is 6, and Hey is 5. And so we can see that Hashem has sewn his name into our DNA. It's like an artist signing off on his work. We also know that it's in the mitzvah of tzedakah. I read this in Aryeh Kaplan's book. Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan, incredible mind. He says that when we take a coin, that's the Yud. And when I put it in my hand, that's the 5, the Hey. And when I reach out with my arm, that's the Vav. And when I put it into the poor person's hand, that's the other 5. That's the Hey that's receiving it. So the mitzvah, the commandment of tzedakah, is really forming HaShem's name in this world. That's another nice idea. This name of Yud Kei Vav Kei is everything. It's everything that we know, everything that we have. It's all of existence. It is even all the other names that I've previously mentioned and all the other ones that I haven't. It's present in all of creation, both the physical and the metaphysical. Anything we study, anything false we hear, everything. This is that name. It's the name of existence. So I now want to summarize with an idea that I think captures the names, everything I've been trying to express. If you take light and you shine it in a room, it'll be beautiful, it'll be nice, it might even be warm. But if you focus that light with intensity, it becomes a laser that can actually cut through any physical object. The same goes here. Saying the names in our prayers has a huge effect. It's not to be undervalued. But when we focus and we put concentration on these names and what they mean, we have the power to change the fabric of the world. That's the idea. That's the whole goal. When we focus on the names, we can change the world. So I now want to conclude. There's a theory in modern day science that there is an edge to the universe. But just as quickly as we venture towards it, it accelerates farther away, constantly expanding each time we leap forward. Today, we've learned about many of the names we use every day to speak to Hashem, the creator of the universe. We've learned about the codes he uses to hide himself in mathematics, biology, architecture, and obviously in Torah. But the best thing that we did today was leap forward towards fulfilling his will. What is his will? To have a relationship with us. For us to know him as Adam Nu Chava. So I hope and bless all of us that we may merit to constantly expand our understanding of Hashem, and all his Shemot, and to constantly leap forwards in all aspects of our life. Shavua Tov.